Calgary's film scene has long been a source of local pride, but have you ever wondered how the movies that have been made here stack up against other Canadian cities? A film critic is exploring the best movies that have been made in different parts of the country. Christopher Redmond writes the Substack Bon Shot, Bad Shot. He just published a deep dive on Calgary's movie history and joins us now. Good morning.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. What a great idea for a project. You're going coast to coast with this. Why did you want to take this on?
Yeah, well, it honestly started with me wondering why Vancouver, which is this huge production hub for Hollywood, for film and TV, why I couldn't name any great movies or filmmakers from there. I could easily name examples from Toronto and Montreal, and I just figured I must be missing something. So I dug, and I actually found all this great stuff, and then I thought, you know what, I want to do this for every city across Canada.
Yeah, so what were the ground rules that you set up for yourself?
Oh, well, that's especially interesting in Calgary because at a certain point I did have to define what the city is, what is shot in the city. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things that I, found is that Calgary, of all places in Canada, a lot of times people say they shot in Calgary, but they didn't actually shoot in Calgary.
Right.
They shot in Banff or Canmore or outside the city. So I did have to draw some lines, and there's the ring road around the city that some people use as a definition, but then there's other boundaries as well that other people use. So I used a little bit of a wider boundary, but I did have to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, and that's a fair point because it does feel like people will shoot here, but they're really, as you said, it's here plus somewhere else, or else it's somewhere just out of the city limits. So looking at Calgary specifically, people can probably think of some high-profile examples in the modern era, but I know you went all the way back to the silent era. Tell us a bit about what was happening in the 1920s.
Yeah, I mean, what's really cool is that one of the first ever feature films, and definitely the most successful ever silent film from Canada, called Back to God's Country from 1919, was a production based in Calgary. The money for the movie was raised in Calgary. Most of the shooting actually happened near Lesser Slave Lake, but it became this huge hit. It made like $1.5 million back in 1919. So you can think about how much that actually is for them. And probably because the star and the writer of the film, Nell Shipman, she gave herself like this scandalous nude scene in it out in nature, which is honestly pretty adorable by today's standards.
Aw, that's cool.
But the first feature film really to shoot in Calgary was called, drumroll please, The Calgary Stampede, right? Starring Hoot Gibson for Universal Pictures. And the advertising for the film in 1925 very proudly boasts how it was filmed on location at the Calgary Stampede, which at that point was just a few years after it had become an annual event.
Right.
And then almost every other feature film made in the silent era, and honestly all the way till the 60s, was basically adventure and westerns shot outside the city, again around Banff and Canmore.
Yeah. Now, you say the first foray of American New Wave cinema came to Calgary in the early 70s. This is Prime Cut, which starred Gene Hackman and Lee Marvin. Tell us more about this film.
Yeah, well, this is this like gritty little crime film shot in slaughterhouses and back alleys, as well as like there's a number of farm scenes outside the city. But it's also the very first ever screen performance by Sissy Spacek, so it's notable for that.
Wow.
And it's cool because there is at least one scene in the film where you can see Lee Marvin, he's on 9th Ave and he's walking past the Palliser Hotel. And of course, it's not set in Calgary, it's set in Kansas City, but it is still cool to be able to see Calgary on screen because there really wasn't any Canadian films at that point. So you kind of have to look to America to see Calgary on screen.
Wow, that's really interesting. I know that you also put together a top 10 list of Hollywood movies shot in Calgary. The top 2 are ones that folks will know well, Brokeback Mountain and Interstellar. At number 3, though, you've got a film from 1978 called Days of Heaven. Tell us more about that.
Oh, so this is a Terrence Malick film from 50 years ago, starring Richard Gere. And it should just be called Magic Hour, the movie. All right, because it was mostly shot in like farming fields south of Lethbridge, but it's truly the most beautiful that Alberta has ever looked on film.
Wow.
I mean, it won the Oscar for Best Cinematography in 1978, and it's still one of the most influential films to cinematographers, just for making the open prairies like consistently jaw-dropping. And they did it by almost exclusively filming in that like 30-minute window while the sun is rising and while it's setting. So like the sky is just constantly pink and purple throughout the film. And it's just beautiful. Like overall, I have Brokeback Mountain as number 1.
Yeah.
Because to me, that filmmaking is truly second to none. so much so that I hope that now that like heated rivalry is the new pop culture code for secret gay romance.
Yeah.
I'm hoping Brokeback Mountain can just become shorthand for straight up masterpiece.
Yeah.
Because in that film, the Alberta landscapes really play into the story. They create this sense of privacy and protection for the characters, but they're also like the mountains are like this reminder of the obstacles they can't overcome. But also using the Rockies to make your movie look great is kind of like cheating a little bit, right? Like it's so easy. Days of Heaven is just so much more impressive. And the ending of the film was shot at Calgary's own Heritage Park. So it does qualify for this list.
Yeah, fair enough. There you go. So when you look at all the movies that have been made here, there's certainly a huge range of different styles of film and, of course, different budgets and motivations. But are there patterns that emerge, or is there anything when you look at this more broadly that really surprises you?
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious to say that the landscape is a big draw for why people come to Calgary. But some of my favorite examples of films from Calgary, I mean, there are big movies that people know, like Superman shot just outside the city and even had a couple, shots within Calgary. So it does count for the list. And there's a number of big movies, a lot of Westerns people think of. And you think of movies like Unforgiven and The Revenant, those actually don't count because they were shot outside of Calgary, right? But the ones to me that got me most excited were actually the films people haven't really probably heard about. There's this like trash action movie from 2001 called Exit Wounds starring Steven Seagal.
Right, yeah.
And it must have been like the last time a Steven Seagal movie was given a big budget because they just absolutely wreak havoc on the Center Street Bridge. Just huge gunfights, helicopters, explosions, and the Calgary Tower in full view. It's just glorious stuff.
It is, yeah.
So that kind of stuff's fun. And movies like Rad, which is a 40-year-old now BMX movie by Hal Needham, who made like Cannonball Run and Smokey and the Bandit. It's actually getting 40th anniversary like retrospective screenings in theaters this year. And you can see Cochrane, Alberta in it a lot, and it's playing Cochrane, USA. As these kids kind of rip their bikes all over town. But it ends with a big race that was filmed at Bonus Park.
Absolutely.
That's a fun one.
Yeah, those are good ones.
Yeah.
Sorry, we got to leave it there, Christopher, because we're just about out of time. But it's such a fun list, and I can't wait to dig through the Substack for this, Christopher. Thanks for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks, Chris.
Christopher Redmond, Canadian film critic, and you could read his post on Calgary's movie history on his Substack. That's called Bad Shot.